So there's this video making the rounds of Tom Holland talking about how he manifested becoming Spider-Man. And he manifested meeting Zendaya and even manifested working with the director Christopher Nolan. And in this clip, he says that he told himself in a recent Hot Ones interview that he believes in manifestation. And not going to argue that at all, but here's a question that I find really fascinating. What does manifestation actually mean? Like for the rest of us that haven't achieved something like that. Because if manifestation is perhaps, let's say, just wishing something really hard, that's not really a strategy. But if there's something deeper happening, maybe Tom Holland accidentally, I'm going to say, gave us a playbook. Okay? And today I want to look at Tom Holland's story through a different lens. Okay? I don't want to prove or disprove manifestation. That's a whole other conversation. But I'm curious in asking, what if manifestation is really about becoming the kind of person who's ready when opportunity shows up? Because I think there are 3 things that Tom did that any of us can practice, and that's what I want to talk about today. Hi, I'm Leeza Steindorf, and I help people communicate with clarity and lead with intention and stay aligned with who they are, even when life does not go according to the plans that they have. And from my perspective, stories like Tom Holland's become powerful when we stop asking, how did he manifest that? And we ask a totally different question. What did he become before that happened? Okay? So, talk about my first principle. He had a clear target. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So long before he wore that Spider-Man suit, which is kind of cool, one has to say, Tom Holland talked really openly about wanting the role, like goes way back. And it's easy to dismiss after the fact, right? But he was competing with 7,500 audition tapes. That's a lot of tapes. And during the second round of auditions, the casting director, Sarah Finn, she said, "We read 2,500 people to arrive at Tom Holland for Spider-Man." 2,500 people, and then they chose him. And I think this is why clarity really matters, because your brain can't recognize opportunities or situations that it's not been taught to recognize and to notice. Okay? So that means that you can train your brain to look for things. We're doing that all the time. Now, whether you call that manifestation or not really doesn't matter. But when you're clear about what you want and you start moving toward that, then you actually notice opportunities that maybe other people are missing or that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. You make different decisions because you're trimmed toward that which you want. You're practicing different skills. You stay with things maybe longer, even after you maybe would have given up otherwise because they matter to you. Like you are moving with such intentionality towards something that clarity actually changes your direction long before the results out there start to change. Okay? So one of my principles is that a clear path begins with a clear destination, like being clear about where it is that you're going to end up. That destination changes the decisions you make today. So it's starting forward and moving backward from them. So maybe, let's try this on, maybe the first step isn't manifestation, maybe it's clarity. But clarity by itself isn't enough, okay? Because a lot of people already know what they want. Maybe you listening to this, you're like, yeah, I know what I want, and I don't have it yet. So why don't we all get there, right? That's the second principle that Tom practiced, from my viewpoint, right? Is that he became ready before anyone else asked. So what that means is he didn't wait until Marvel called. Like he spent years dancing and acting and training and auditioning and failing and succeeding and learning, like did not stop, just kept going on. So when the opportunity arrived, I'm going to say showed up, when he knew it was there, he wasn't just starting, like he was prepared. He was already there. And people often call that luck. I'm not sure he would call that luck. I think I would call it readiness. Like he had gotten himself to the point that he could jump right in. So manifestation without preparation really becomes wishful thinking. So I'm not debunking his conviction of manifestation, but he was prepared. He was ready to go. He was in the start blocks. And that kind of preparation without the vision of where you want to go, that lacks the direction, right? So the magic happens when those two things meet. And that raises, for me, another question. If preparation matters that much, what keeps people from staying prepared long enough? Like to sticking with it until you get there, until it happens, until that point comes, like Tom Holland spoke about, that here it is, I manifested it, right? And that's the third principle. He stayed consistent enough to be recognized. He stayed consistent enough to be recognized. That means that he didn't stop what he was doing in a disciplined manner so that people around him, all circumstances, recognize that's what he does, right? It was unmistakable. And honestly, I'd say that this is probably the most least exciting part of probably his story, but the process in itself. But I think it's the most important, because Tom Holland did not become Spider-Man because he believed. He became Spider-Man because he kept showing up as someone worth trusting. Like he was so clear about where he wanted to go and that was going to happen in his world. And every audition, every project that he took on, every conversation, every experience, that every project he jumped into, he showed up the same way again and again and again. And people began seeing him as the person who's capable of carrying that responsibility, of producing that kind of performance, of bringing to the table what he knew he needed to bring to the table to achieve that role. So opportunities often show up a little bit disguised, right? But what I'm going to say is that the reputation that we build allows those opportunities to see us for who we really are, and our clarity, our grooming of what it is that we know we want, helps us see the opportunities coming. So long before someone actually gives you the opportunity or invites you in, they're already deciding whether you are ready for it, right? They know enough about you, or they've seen you in whatever role it is, whether it's in a social situation, it's in a professional situation, family situation. They've gotten to know you over time of how you've been showing up. And that's something that he did amazingly, right? So I'm curious, if you've ever looked back on something in your own life, right, and thought it was super amazing, and realized that after the fact, after it happened, man, I've actually been preparing for that for a long time. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen, but when I look back on it, I've been really getting ready for that the whole time. And if that happened to you, I'd like you to leave your story in the comments. I'd really love to hear about it, because those kind of situations, what I'm speaking to here now is, in retrospect, we understand that we've been preparing for something. We've been preparing ourselves, moving toward what it is that we want. So, did Tom Holland manifest Spider-Man? Maybe. But I actually think that something even more useful happened. I think that he imagined a future so clearly, and he worked so consistently, like he was on it, and he stayed ready. He didn't stop. He just kept going, that when that opportunity came, he recognized it. And because he'd been showing up that way, they recognized him. And I think that's part that we can all learn from, whatever it is that we're moving toward. So, one thing I want to say is that I appreciate these stories because situations like Tom Holland's, they remind us that it's not only about dreaming, it's understanding that we have agency. Like, we have the power within ourselves to move us toward what we want. And that clarity and consistency and not giving up, that's what moves us forward. Because dreams actually become, I'm going to say, more powerful when we match them up with our preparation, when we move ourselves toward that. Now, you want to call that manifestation? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a whole different thing, but it's definitely alignment. Or maybe you just want to call it being ready. I'm friends with a very famous author, and he said to me it only took him 40 years to become an overnight success because he'd been doing the work that long, right? Same principle. So the future doesn't show up because we wished for it, right? And life happens. I'm not saying you're in control of circumstances, but how you show up and what action you take to move yourself toward the things that you want in your life, when you're clear, when you have a really clear goal about where you want to move to, that has power. Absolutely. And sometimes those situations arrive quietly, and then we find out that we're actually the person ready to step into it because we've been preparing that whole time. And maybe that is what manifestation looks like on a daily basis, right? It's not changing reality only with your thoughts. It's allowing your thoughts to shape the choices that you make every day, so that one day those choices that you're making actually have curated the reality that you're stepping into. Yeah, and that puts you in the driver's seat of your own experience. So, just a few thoughts to think about. If this gave you a different way of thinking about manifestation, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Every week we take stories that everyone's talking about and really look at the deeper patterns that relate to all of us as human beings, so that we can live and lead and have relationships and communicate with greater clarity and a lot more pleasure. And if there's someone in your life who keeps waiting for the right moment, maybe this is a video that you want to share with them. Maybe it'd be useful to them too. Because sometimes the opportunities don't just show up for the people who are wishing for them. It's really about people who are making themselves ready for when the opportunity arrives. All right? Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And until next time, be well.